This is obviously a uniquely and incredibly difficult decision.
I was laid off from the Washington Post today, along with around 300 of my other colleagues.
The foreign desk was decimated. We just cut Russia, Ukraine reporters, the whole Middle East reporting team, correspondents in China, Iran, Turkey. The sports desk was completely closed. Local Metro desk is in tatters.
Glenn Kessler said in a column earlier this week that Bezos is not trying to save the Washington Post. He's, quote, trying to survive Donald Trump.
It's been a tough time for a long time for the newspaper business. But what just happened at the Washington Post is something entirely different. The 150-year-old newspaper has just laid off a third of their staff as democracy hangs by a thread, and the billionaire owner of one of the nation's most important newspapers decides in the face of a second Trump term to do a pivot and to kowtow to the dictator. I want to get to some reaction, especially from Post reporters themselves. But first, check out this Super Bowl ad that the Washington Post ran during the first Trump term.
When we go off to war, when we exercise our rights, when we soar to our greatest heights, when we mourn and pray, when our neighbors are at risk, when our nation is threatened, there's someone to gather the facts, to bring you the story, no matter the cost. Because knowing empowers us. Knowing helps us decide. Knowing keeps us free.
And day by day, we are becoming a little less free. There have been the sacrifices of the Post foreign correspondents, like Jamal Khashoggi mentioned there. Then also, the Post is a local newspaper as much as a national and international one. And a lot of stories that happen within Washington, D.C. are of national and international importance. You think about the stories that they've broken. Of course, Woodward and Bernstein breaking open the Watergate scandal.
There was this strange burglary at the Democratic headquarters in the Watergate office building. Carl Bernstein and I were really given running room to look at every aspect of it.
We worked on an assumption that this was a very big story, and the paper allowed us to work full-time on it.
The editors would never say, move on to something else. Digging, knocking on doors, leaving nothing unexamined. It was a massive cover-up and criminal conspiracy run by President Nixon.
Our job is to report what we call the truth.
The attack on the Pentagon September 11th, the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. These were all local stories in Washington, D.C. that the Post covered that helped shape the course of the nation. And that kind of reporting in D.C. and all over the world was happening despite the challenges to the Post business, even to this day. And here's a tweet, the original one from Lizzie Johnson just a couple of weeks ago. Waking up without power, heat, or running water again. But the work here in Kyiv, Ukraine, continues. Warming up the car, writing in pencil, pen ink freezes by headlamp. Well, today she was laid off by the Post in the middle of a war zone. The entire Pulitzer Prize winning Middle East team, much of the climate reporting team, and then here's a summary of who else.
Many of these cuts were great investigative journalists who chased down horrible people, documented war zones, helped the public better understand the world. The team covering race in America was also cut, and many of the layoffs were women and people of color. We in the Guild are raising money for everybody who's been cut and is hurting. I'll leave a link to that in the comments. But if you don't want to donate to that, please just go find an independent journalist you want to support, because this kind of journalism is really important, and we're one step closer to it all going away.
I have colleagues who are in Ukraine who are going to have to come back, colleagues who are in Jerusalem. Basically, arts coverage that doesn't involve Trump has been eliminated.
And she works in arts coverage and makes the point here in the note about Trump's attacks on the Kennedy Center and how the Post is no longer covering those. So this is a video message directly to Jeff Bezos that foreign correspondents for the Post made just a week ago. This is at a time in our history when real media can't even get into the Pentagon to cover what the Trump administration is doing there.
Jeff, please save the Post.
For nearly a century, the Washington Post's foreign correspondents have been on the ground for the world's most pressing stories.
I'm currently reporting from Ukraine's Donetsk region, where we just heard the sound of an explosion in the background.
I'm here at Masna border crossing in between Lebanon and Syria.
I'm here in Dhaka, the capital city of Bangladesh.
I'm here in Surat, Gujarat, the world's diamond capital. President Donald Trump's tariffs are wreaking havoc.
I was there when the German government suddenly collapsed.
I was in Russia when Russian forces launched the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I was there when a Russian missile hit a Ukrainian playground and killed 9 kids.
I was there on a fishing boat in the middle of the South China Sea when Chinese Coast Guard ships showed up to assert their claim over contested territory.
I was there when the Taliban tightened their grip on Afghanistan.
The crowd is at least hundreds, if not thousands, strong in the hope of seeing the burial of Alexei Navalny.
I mean, the damage is extensive. They were in the South Lebanese town of Nabatea.
I was there in January 2020 outside of Wuhan when China shut it down to contain a mysterious virus.
I was there when U.S. forces attacked Caracas and captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores.
I'm in Kfar Aza, one of the frontline villages that was just cleared of Hamas fighters last night.
You know that electricity... Okay. So that is an explosion real nearby.
To report the news, you just have to be there.
We were 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 there.
I'm proud to be a foreign correspondent for the Washington Post. International reporters are your eyes and ears around the world. Washington needs us.
The world needs us.
Jeff, please save us. Save the Post. Please, Jeff, save the Post. Please, Jeff, save the Post.
Please, Jeff, save the Post.
The journalist Jonathan Capehart, a former member of the Post editorial board, breaks down what's really happening.
There was so much hope when Jeff Bezos bought the Washington Post from the revered Graham family in 2013. You could feel the relief from the nervous journalists in the room when Bezos promised to give the paper the resources it needed to rebuild. And he kept his promise, just in time for the paper to be running at full speed while covering Donald Trump's first presidency. But over the ensuing years, things happened.
The Post deciding not in 2024 to endorse a presidential candidate as it had always done, hedging against a Trump victory. And Jeff Bezos donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration and has generally done whatever he can to avoid Trump's wrath that could impact his other businesses, including Amazon, including Blue Origin. So yeah, Bezos is clearly focused on the businesses that make him money. The Post is not one of those. He got a sense of what Trump could do in the first term. Here's a headline from 2018. Trump personally pushed the Postmaster General to double rates on Amazon and other firms. That was a preview of what could happen in the second Trump term as he continues to consolidate power and to keep these billionaire oligarchs close to him. While Bezos may have had more noble intentions, that's clearly reversed in the second Trump term. Listen to what Marty Barron had to say. He was the Washington Post editor handpicked by Bezos during the first Trump term.
I was pleased with his ownership when I was there. He invested in the Post. He advocated for the Post. He defended the Post against brutal attacks by Donald Trump. In 2024, something dramatically changed, and that was the return of Donald Trump to the White House. He was bending the knee to Donald Trump. It declares itself to be an independent newspaper. And yet Jeff Bezos was at the inauguration with Donald Trump right there on the stage. Amazon bought the so-called documentary of Melania Trump for an exorbitant fee. Amazon acquired the rights to The Apprentice. That's putting money essentially directly into the pocket of Donald Trump. And then they changed the entire editorial page to exclude any commentary that was left of center.
Amazon spending $75 million on the Melania movie that's playing to empty theaters nationwide. Effectively a bribe to the Trump administration. So the logical result of all this, we get headlines like this from the editorial board at the Washington Post. Blue states banning cooperation with ICE will backfire, or little to gain by raising taxes on the rich. New research shows the current top federal income tax rate is close to revenue maximizing. Who knows if this will be the final nail in the coffin for the Post and its long and storied history. These are the stakes. It's not just about the Post. It's about our democracy. Here was Marty Barron just a couple weeks ago talking about Trump's attacks on the press generally.
The Espionage Act, which we're still living with today, and I expect that this administration will someday try to take advantage of that so that it can, in fact, imprison journalists.
And Trump is already arresting journalists. Don Lemon, Georgia Fort. They even went after a Washington Post journalist. Unprecedented raid of a Washington Post reporter's home. She covers the federal government and public servants.
As the Trump administration has apparently raided the house of Washington Post reporter Hannah Nathanson. Nathanson had previously received widespread acclaim for her reporting on the Trump administration's efforts to fire federal workers over the past year. It's hard to overemphasize how serious of a press freedom violation raiding a reporter's home is.
Here's how Jason Rezaian, himself a hero, Post reporter who was incarcerated from well over a year in Iran, describes this.
Federal agents seized a phone, 2 laptops, and other devices from Nathanson. In a statement on Wednesday, the Post said, quote, "The outrageous seizure of our reporters' confidential news gathering materials chills speech, cripples reporting, and inflicts irreparable harm every day the government keeps its hands on these materials. According to First Amendment advocacy groups, the search marked the first time the U.S. government has raided a journalist's home as part of a national security leak investigation.
Really dark times for American democracy. And what has happened to the press, CBS and 60 Minutes and Disney and ABC and the LA Times and TikTok and now the Washington Post. There's a GoFundMe set up by the Guild that's raised a lot of money so far, but there are a lot of journalists. I hope that they will go on to start media outlets of their own, or Substacks, or YouTube channels. And in the meantime, that we all do what we can to protect journalists, support local and public media, subscribe to independent media outlets, that one way or the other, the truth gets out there.